Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because honestly, we are unpacking something that could fundamentally change how we view the literal fabric of reality. We're talking about looking at the universe not just as some empty void, but as an ultimate digital computer, and you and I are literally made out of its code. For decades, the absolute greatest minds in physics have been trying to write out the ultimate blueprint of the universe. They've been struggling to unite the physics of the very large with the physics of the very small. Well, today we're diving into a radical framework called unified dynamics, and our main goal is to understand exactly how it unites standard physics. And the absolute best part? It does it with zero free parameters, no tuning dials, no human-made fudge factors. Let's just jump right in.
So here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The physics parameter problem. 2. Enter unified dynamics. 3. The 7/192 capacity limit. 4. Bridging macro and micro. And finally, 5. The ultimate falsification test.
All right, starting us off with section 1, the physics parameter problem, or the flaw in the machine. To really get why this is a big deal, we have to understand the core conflict in standard physics first. So general relativity governs gravity in the cosmos, right? And quantum field theory governs particles. They are both beautiful, incredibly successful continuous field theories, but they are completely incompatible with each other. It's kind of like a smooth analog vinyl record. It sounds great, but it breaks down into infinite noise when scratched or examined too closely. Unified dynamics completely discards this idea of a continuous spacetime. Instead, it proposes a strict, digital, pixelated network. It uses what's called a discrete kinematic grammar, meaning reality is built out of countable, strict mathematical steps, rather than just a smooth, undivided void.
Now here's the real kicker. To make those old analog theories fit together even a little bit, physicists literally have to manually plug in free parameters. These are basically cosmic fudge factors. It's kind of like smacking the side of an old TV until the picture clears up. They have to manually set the speed of light, the mass of particles, or the gravitational constant just to make the human math work. Unified dynamics argues that, hey, if a theory truly describes the absolute foundation of reality, it shouldn't need us to hand dial the numbers. It should possess pure geometric parsimony, where every single constant naturally emerges from the geometry itself.
Which brings us nicely to section 2. Enter unified dynamics, the digital network.
This framework asks us to define space not as a smooth, empty room, but as a digital network built on tetrahedral closures. Think of them as 3D microscopic triangular pixels. Imagine reality not as a blank canvas, but as an expanding three-dimensional web. When a structural deviation, like a particle of matter, is introduced, the network literally has to build geometric scaffolding around it just to contain it. That specific scaffolding process is what we call the kinematic grammar. It's a combinatorial mechanics system, and it operates entirely on strict logical topological updates.
So instead of intense, mind-bending continuous calculus, I want you to think of these three operators as literal, sequential machine parts in an engine that push the universe forward. First up, internal sealing traps the structural defect. Next, boundary refunneling acts kind of like an exhaust, projecting that defect outward to create observable space. And finally, terminal projection finalizes the observable boundary. These specific steps just execute, one right after another. Every single time they cycle, a literal tick of time passes and a pixel of space is generated. It's mechanical.
Okay, moving to section 3, the 7/192 capacity limit, basically the magic fraction. All right, this right here is the absolute heart of the framework, 7/192. This is a massive deal. This number represents the exact combinatorial capacity limit. When that internal geometric machine we were just talking about seals a defect, there is a strict mathematical ratio required to expand the network around it. It turns out exactly 7 internal defect states must map across a 192-state macroscopic boundary. This isn't just a random guess. It's a rigorously derived, absolute mathematical limit of the tetrahedral geometry itself.
I really absolutely cannot stress this enough. This fraction emerges deterministically. That means there are exactly 0 free parameters. None. No arbitrary tuning dials required at all. The universe's geometric expansion is strictly proportional to the internal matter it contains, and it is governed purely by this 7/192 ratio. There is 0 human intervention needed to balance these equations.
Now, because the boundary naturally maps perfectly in half, splitting into an outward-facing observable surface and an inward-facing root, the kinematic gravitational constant, which is called g-kinematic, just falls out flawlessly. It's exactly half of 7/192, which is exactly 7 over 384. This right here is the derived geometric capacity of gravity in this whole framework.
So what does this mean? It means mass and gravity aren't separate mysterious substances anymore. They are literally just the necessary mathematical footprint of this expanding combinatorial network. Gravity emerges purely as the geometric capacity required to encode internal defects. This completely replaces the old continuous Planck mass offset, and it proves that what we experience as masses is just a measure of structural deviation. Imagine a knot in a piece of wood. Mass is basically just a geometric knot forced into the closed boundary of the network. It's just such an incredibly elegant way to unite matter and geometry.
Let's keep rolling with Section 4, Bridging Macro and Micro, Unrolling Time.
So why does time only go forward? Well, the arrow of time is really just statistical inescapability. In unified dynamics, entropy goes strictly up because as the universe ticks forward, the spatial boundary expands. And as that boundary expands, the internal routing permutations, the different ways the network can actually connect, exponentially expand. The system fundamentally cannot run backward because the phase space of available configurations grows vastly larger with every single causal update. Time's arrow is just combinatorial expansion. It's a one-way street.
And it gets better. You've probably heard of the standard model gauge symmetries in particle physics. SU3 for the strong force, SU2 for the weak force, and U1 for electromagnetism. Well, in this framework, they emerge completely naturally from the topological fault lines of these discrete structures. The fundamental proto-matter, those underlying knots in our network, literally fractures mathematically into these exact symmetry groups when projected into our observable macroscopic limit. The whole shebang stems directly from that initial geometric architecture.
Finally, Section 5, the ultimate falsification test. The trap is officially set.
Now, unified dynamics isn't just beautiful, theoretical math that hides behind untestable ideas. It actually sets an absolute brutal trap for future observations. As this quote lays out, if the physical universe doesn't perfectly match the geometry of the 7 over 192 fraction, the entire framework is scientifically dead. Gone. Because it relies on zero free parameters, it literally cannot be tweaked or adjusted to fit the data later. It either works perfectly right out of the box or it's fundamentally wrong. That is a massive, incredibly high-stakes claim in modern physics.
So how do we actually test it? Well, because the event horizon of a black hole is actually pixelated by that 7 over 384 structural offset we talked about, it isn't perfectly smooth. Unified dynamics firmly predicts that when black holes merge, the resulting gravitational wave ringdowns will show a strict 1.8% deviation, specifically an overtone truncation, which is essentially a missing mathematical ring in the echo of the collision. Now, current detectors just aren't sensitive enough to see this yet. We need a signal-to-noise ratio greater than 100. This means next-generation gravitational wave detectors, like the upcoming Einstein telescope, must find this exact 1.8% deviation, or the whole theory fails completely.
I want to leave you with this really provocative thought as we wait for the Einstein telescope in Cosmic Explorer to finally power on in the 2030s. Will peering at the bleeding edge of the Planck grid reveal a smooth, continuous spacetime completely destroying unified dynamics? Or will we find a distinct digital fingerprint of the 7 over 192 limit, proving once and for all that reality is, at its core, a mathematically perfect combinatorial network? Thank you so much for exploring this incredibly mind-bending framework with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.